Thank you for waiting. My name is Maya, which means illusion or magic. I've got curly hair, I've got dark eyes, I've got a dark red birthmark on the left side of my face. Do I look familiar? I've had my photo on the front page of a national newspaper. I'm 13 years old. I'm always 13. I've always been 13. Oh, and even though I haven't got my license, I can drive a car. Debbie is the other person you need to know about. She's my mum. My dad's not around. Debbie's got pale blue eyes and fine blonde hair. She's small and slim, but she's stronger than she looks. We've just moved here, me and Debbie. We've just moved to this The taxi pulled up at the curb. The driver put our suitcases on the pavement. I walked up the gravel path. I walked up to the door saying, "Number 9. So, what's it like round here? I saw the river and the ruin by the roundabout. I saw the church on the hill and the bus station. I saw the transporter bridge. We've lived in lots of different places, me and Debbie. We've been all over. Debbie comes from a place surrounded by hills made of chalk, where fighter planes flew over low and deafening. One evening, the sun was setting. Debbie was at the window doing the washing up. A jet ripped across the orange sky. She felt a tremor in her belly, like a hand reaching in and giving everything a good shake. Before the year was out, I was born. It wasn't long before we moved on. We moved to a town with a lot of white buildings. We moved to a village where you can hear frogs croaking at night. We lived near the sea once. We lived on the 33rd floor of a tower block that swayed in the wind. We moved to a place with bed bugs. We moved to the 4th floor of a house with a rope ladder in a box by the window to climb down if there was a fire. We moved to a place with horseshoes on the walls. We moved to a shop with above a sign saying skin fade. We lived in a city with a wall running right through the middle, and you had to remember which side to stay on. We lived in a house with horseshoes on the walls. We've lived in towns where all the shops were boarded up, and towns with beautiful fountains. We've lived in a caravan, on a houseboat, at the edge of a park, by a train track. It was for different reasons that we kept moving. Sometimes Debbie would say, "There aren't any jobs here," or "You can't get a good education," or "It's not safe." Once we came home and there was a hole gouged in the back door. A window on the houseboat got smashed. One time she was chatting to a neighbour in the street, and Debbie said, "This government is a bunch of bastards." The next day, the neighbour wouldn't look at us, and the day after that, Debbie got the suitcases down from the attic. Other times, it was just a feeling, Debbie said. She would get this feeling, and it would be time to go. Is this school any good? I had this teacher once, Mr. Collard. We called him Chewy Louie. He comes into the classroom one morning. He says, right, today's lesson is in compassion, because some of you lot, you don't know you're born. He says, imagine this. It's the middle of the night, 2 a.m., say. You've got to leave your home and your town, and you don't know where you're going, and you're never coming back. You've got to leave now. What are you going to take? Someone says, my phone. Someone else says, my Nike Air Max, my PS4, my GHDs, picture of me and my nan, my nail art kit, my Harry Potter books, good for long journeys, my magic set. Mr. Collard shakes his head. He says, what about some warm clothing? What about some dried food? What about a torch and spare batteries? What about medicines? What about passports? What about plastic sheeting to keep you dry? He switches all the lights off and jerks the blinds down. The lights have gone out, he shouts. You have to pack in the dark! I sit quietly at the back. Becky Harris calls out, bubble machine, unicorn onesie. And now there's artillery fire, yells Mr. Collard, and he fumbles with the stereo in the dim light to get the sound effects he's lined up, but a song plays and the whole class start dancing to Taylor Swift. Mr. Collard sweeps the stereo off the desk and it smashes on the floor. Everyone goes quiet. Somebody starts crying. His eyes dance around the room and they land on me. Everyone turns. They're all looking at me. I stood on the doorstep of the new house. The front door was green. There was a sign saying, no junk mail, no cold callers, no charity bags. Debbie put the key in the lock and we went in. It was dim in the hallway. It smelt of bleach. A light blinked red on the smoke detector. When I looked through the letterbox, I could see the river. What Debbie will want to know is this a good area? A safe area? She's a safety nut. My dad's not about, you see. Once we got burgled and a policeman came round. He told us all the things we could do to keep safe. Locks, alarms, floodlights. He said, good to know, 2 females without a man around. And Debbie's like, detective. Let me get this straight. You're seriously suggesting we would be safer with a man in the house? You hear stories about mothers, don't you? Running back into burning buildings to rescue their little ones. The firefighters shouting, are you mental? The neighbours saying, don't do it, love. But the mother's like, back off, wet tea towel, slap it on my head, I'm going in. You hear about pregnant mothers refusing cancer treatment, or mothers eating rats so their kid can have the last sausage. You hear about mothers putting their babies into hatches in the walls of hospitals, even though their hearts are breaking. I heard about this one mother in the middle of baking, hears a sound out in the backyard. She pulls her pinny off and runs outside. There's a mountain lion caught red-handed with her kid in its mouth. She doesn't hesitate, clocks it on the head with the muffin tray and forces its jaws open with her bare hands. There was a woman knocked off a bridge with her son in her arms. She made a human cocoon around him as they fell. She was smashed to pieces, but there wasn't a scratch on him. There was a family on a camping trip in Alberta. There was a flash of lightning. The mother heard a branch crack. She dived on top of her 4 little girls and saved their lives. Her spine had to be welded back together. She was in hospital for a year. She said it was worth every second, every screw. She was absolutely thrilled to bits. This is not going to be one of those stories, by the way. It does start in a storm, though. There was a storm the night I was born. Hailstones slammed into the windows of the maternity ward. The rain was like waterfalls sluicing on the roof, and the screaming of the wind drowned out the screaming of the women in labour. The lights flickered. The roof started leaking in places. The nurses put buckets under the drips, and the mothers shouted, "What's happening?" The midwife said, "Get a hold of yourselves. The generator will kick in soon, and you'll all get your tea and toast afterwards." Debbie wasn't screaming. She bit down on a rolled-up towel. She squeezed her eyes tight shut and imagined herself in a quiet white room with soft carpets, while the contractions powered through her like a freight train and the storm bellowed outside. When I finally slid out, the midwife said, "Good girl, Debbie." And then they picked me up, and someone said, "Oh, hang on. Is that just blood? Or let's get her cleaned up. Do you want to hold her, Mum? You need to bond." Debbie's like, "Where's the flippin' tea and toast you promised?" They said, "Buck up, girl. You're a mother now. Start acting like one. We'll just stitch you up and wipe the blood and slime off baby." They wiped and they wiped until they realised they'd have to stop wiping because some of it wasn't going to come off, ever. Debbie looked at me then, and she sighed and said, "Okay, hand me that baby." And since then, we've never been apart. Were you born in the hospital here? Did you ever hear about the tiger toss? I learnt about it in school. It was in the Roman times. Most people were very poor back then. There was no contraception, no hospital. There were too many babies and not enough food. When a new baby was born, the mother had to take it to the emperor, and he would examine it and decide whether it was worth keeping. Yes or no. If it was a no, the mother had to take it and throw it off a mountain called the tiger toss. The teacher said it was normal for them in those days, just like throwing out a mouldy loaf. Some kids said, "So if we'd have been born back then, some of us wouldn't have made it. We would have been tossed off the mountain." And the teacher said, "No doubt." And the kids said, "Which of us, do you reckon?" The teacher said, "We're going to move on now." But the kids all go, "Come on, miss, which of us would have gone off the tiger toss?" She said, "I can't possibly answer that." They're all looking at me, but I'm fine. When I got home, I Googled the tiger toss, but I couldn't find it, even though I searched all different ways. Romans threw babies off mountains. Roman baby murder. Unwanted babies. Rejected babies. Baby Cliff Chuck. I found all sorts of other things, though. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the world. We stood in the hallway. Our eyes got used to the dim light. We noticed the doormat saying, "Welcome." The beige carpet covered in plastic. The painting on the wall of the transporter bridge. The table with the vase of pretend flowers and the greetings card saying, "Home Sweet Home," signed by the team. I went upstairs. I found the bathroom at the end of the hallway. The shower curtain saying, "Land ahoy," and the hook on the back of the door shaped like an anchor. Do you like baths or showers? I'm a bath person. I like to go under and practice holding my breath. I don't have a certificate or anything, but technically I've done survival training on the open sea. Here's a story for you. There was a ship. It was somewhere in Asia, a massive white ship as big as a block of flats. There were hundreds of children on board. They were on a school trip to a holiday island. The ship took a corner too fast and tipped over. The water began to pour in. The captain and the crew kept making announcements for the passengers to stay in their rooms. Stay in your rooms. A boy filmed it on his phone. The ship is on its side. They're telling each other to keep still. Somebody asks, "Should I call my mother?" The captain and the crew abandoned the ship and left 250 school children to drown. I was telling Debbie about it one day when she was in the shower. I said, if I was that captain, I would never have done that. I would never have left those kids to drown. And Debbie said, "How can you be so sure?" I said, "I just wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. Would you?" Debbie says, "The thing is, you don't really know what you're made of. How can you really know what kind of a person you are?" Sometimes I think she doesn't have any faith in me at all. Sometimes I catch her looking at me like she's literally wondering who I am. Debbie prefers showers. She says, with a bath, you're just sitting in your own filth. Have you seen Psycho? It's a 15. Did you get taught about World War II? Children have been tricked to their deaths by being told they needed a shower. Is it true that it rains a lot here? That's fine by me. I like the rain. What I'd like to do is walk across that transporter bridge in the rain. Have you ever walked across the top? I'd like to stand at the top in the middle of a storm. That would be amazing. In the bathroom, I opened the medicine cabinet. It had a red cross on the front. Inside was shampoo and toothpaste, all travel-sized. The window was open. It was very quiet, just the tap dripping. Is everyone okay? I'm okay. I'm fine. Sometimes at school, teachers will look at me and ask me, "Is everything okay? Are you okay?" And I always say, "I'm fine." I hope there's some other kids live on this street. I used to be friends with this boy once who lived next door. He used to go down the bottom of his garden after tea to read comics. When it got dark, he switched a torch on and stayed out there till his mother shouted for him to come in. First time I talked to him through the fence, he said, Look, I've got 9 brothers and sisters, so no offence, but I come out here for a bit of peace and quiet. At that time, in that place, there was gunfire most nights, army helicopters in the sky. Your bag got searched at a checkpoint if you wanted to go through the town centre. And if the women on our street saw soldiers coming, they'd go outside and bang the bin lids together, because sometimes the soldiers stomped through the back gardens and smashed down doors for no reason. But this boy, Michael, says, "Trust me, it's worse in my house. There's no worse racket in the world than my family shouting over the top of the men ranting on the telly." I share my sweets with him through a hole in the fence, listen to him moan about his big sister who annoys him with her stupid laugh and her constant nail filing. I climb over and he shines his torch on my face and he sees my birthmark and doesn't say anything about it. One evening, I'm over there. We're eating popping candy and looking at the sunset. Suddenly, we hear a noise, a rustling in the bushes. We shrink against the fence. A man steps onto the garden path. The porch light goes on. It'll be Michael's mum with the bin lid, but it's not. It's his sister, Orla, the annoying one with the nails and the laugh. We hold our breaths. Orla glances back at the house and then walks down the path and right up to the soldier. They whisper and then they disappear behind the shed together for a long time. When they come out, she's doing up the buttons on her blouse. She hurries back up the path and he's gone into the dark of the lanes. A few nights later, 2 men come to Michael's house. They take off their balaclavas. They're neighbours, dads from our street. Michael and all his brothers and sisters are crying and his mum's shaking and saying, "For God's sake, take me." They say, "Calm down, Helen, we just need to talk to her." And they half lead, half carry Orla out the front door and into the back of a car. They brought her back the next day. She stopped laughing. The house was quieter after that. Their mum kept the back door locked and their garden grew over with weeds. Then one day, Debbie came home from shopping in the town. As she put her key in the lock, the pavement shook and plumes of smoke started going up all over the city. She puts her bags down, looks at me doing my homework at the kitchen table and says, "It's time to go." I walked back downstairs and into the kitchen. I opened all the cupboards, the drawer full of takeaway menus, the empty fridge. I read the sign above the sink that said, "Wash your hands," in 10 different languages. I got 2 mugs off the mug tree. I wanted to make us a cup of tea, but there weren't any tea bags. "Are you hungry?" "I'm fine." "Do you know where the nearest supermarket is?" "The taxi driver said there's an abandoned one here." "Is that true?" "He said they say it's haunted." "Have you ever been inside?" "Do you get embarrassed by your parents?" I don't like going shopping with Debbie. She talks to herself, puts things in the trolley and then puts them back on the shelf. She holds up the queue trying to pay with all these different vouchers. "Do you know if there's any jobs going round here?" I've done all sorts. Cleaning, cafes, clothes shops. I've got skills and experience. Customer service, adaptability. I've worked with cosmetics. I can dig a grave. I worked on a chicken farm once. We got on a bus to the farm, which was really a factory. We bounced around in the back every morning with the other workers. on wooden planks. Exhaust fumes seeped through holes in the floor. None of us had the right papers, but the factory didn't care. A lot of those people were running away from a war across the border. Some of them were kids like me. I tried to make friends, but they stared at their feet. Each morning, Mike, the manager, gave us a pep talk. We all had to shout, "Chicken challenge," and high-five each other. Me and Debbie worked on the cutting line. We wore matching hairnets and rubber gloves. Our job was to run the chicken wings through a spinning saw. Sometimes the rubber gloves burst and cold chicken juice got splurted all over our hands. Some days there were accidents in the factory, but you just had to keep going, keep the system running. You couldn't be the weak link in the line. One day, Mike, the manager, says, "People want more chicken, so we're going to spin these saws faster. And from now on, you guys are going to stack the wings in threes when you put them through the saw. It's totally safe." Mike twirls his keys around his fingers. There's a picture of his kids on the key ring, smiling twin girls with red bows in their hair. Mike likes to talk about his little girls, how he was on holiday and he went to this village which was by a beautiful beach, but so poor. The kids there had no school, no clean water. They all played in the dirt. Mike and his wife just looked at each other and said, "Who wants to come back to America with us?" And every single kid said, "Yes, me, take me." So they picked the cutest two and got on a plane. It was that easy, Mike said. The girls have got new names, new clothes, new everything. They send back money each month to their birth mother in the village. Everybody wins, says Mike. On the factory floor, he starts to walk away. Then this girl, a girl who rides with me on the bus, I've never heard her speak before. She pulls off her hairnet and says, "We're not doing that." There's a moment. Mike shouts, "Now let's get back on it, people." Everything's quiet. Everybody's still. The stunners, the gutters, the pluckers, the bleachers, the factory holds its breath. A woman peels her gloves off, slaps them down and steps away from the line. Over on the deboning table, somebody starts banging a knife. More knife handles join in the rhythm, and people start chanting, "Strike, strike, strike." I look at Debbie. Her eyes say, "Keep your head down, keep quiet." In the break room, everybody slaps the girl on the back and ruffles her hair. Mike comes back down from the office and says, "Okay, just a sec, we need to check everybody's papers." And then just like that, we have to clear out our lockers, hand in our uniforms, and leave without our wages. The next morning, me and Debbie are on another bus, headed out of town, our suitcases knocking around in the hold. Debbie sleeps. I watch cornfields roll by. I wonder if that girl shouldn't have done what she did. Or maybe it was worth it. What do you think? I walked into the living room. I pulled up the blind and sat on the sofa. It had a plastic cover on it. On the coffee table was a newspaper. The headline said, "Enough is enough." I took off my shoes and lay back on the crackly plastic. We were on a train this one time. We shivered in the corridor outside the toilet and hid from the ticket inspector. I stole a Snickers bar from the buffet trolley when it came past. The buffet lady saw me and she didn't say anything. I saw the tattoo on her arm saying, Sophia. I got this thought in my head then. I thought, I wonder, does my dad have a tattoo of my name on his arm? Before I could stop myself, I said it out loud. Debbie just looked at me and said, I don't think so, Maya. I doubt it. One time, we were watching telly, and this girl met her long-lost father on Oprah, and I said, I wonder if that will ever happen to me. Debbie said, it's not like that. He was a stranger. I wouldn't even know his face. And she changed the channel on the TV. Do you watch a lot of TV? I watch too much, I think. But some stuff, it's educational. I saw this program once. It was when Hitler was trying to turn the world German. He moved a load of German families into Poland. To make room for them, he moved the Polish people out of their homes. A knock on the door in the middle of the night. A truck with the engine running outside. Men in uniforms, arms folded in every room, watching while the parents try to pack. The children start to cry and ask questions. Where are we going? The next afternoon, the new German family turn up at an office. They're given a key with an address on a big tag and a map. They're told to go and find their new home. The government made these propaganda pictures, smiling new families coming through the door of a sparkling new home. But then, on the program, this lady, a woman who'd moved into one of those stolen homes, she said, we fumbled with the lock. It was dark inside. All the blinds were drawn. The house was a mess. It was in chaos. You could tell that people had left in a hurry. We were frightened. Lying on the sofa, I looked around the room. There was a picture on the wall of all these famous places around the world. The Taj Mahal, the Statue of Liberty, the Houses of Parliament, Ayers Rock, the Eiffel Tower. There was a plane flying across the top of the picture, writing some words in its vapor trail. It said, living the dream. After the train, we got a ferry. Debbie told me to go up on the deck and try and spot the Eiffel Tower, but all I could see were rocks and grey buildings in the distance. It was raining when we got to where we were staying. It was a grey tower block on the 5th floor. The landlord came in without knocking. He sat on the sofa and smoked. He watched Debbie while she counted out the rent. He said, I've got mouths to feed too. She stood on a chair to show him the crack in the wall where cockroaches came out of. He shrugged and said, you get what you get. One evening, these 3 boys from our block were walking home from football. They noticed a police car coming up the street behind them. They all knew the rule. If you see a police car, you run, whether or not you've got a reason to. They ran right through the neighbourhood, through underpasses, cut across estates, raced down alleys, but the car kept following. They were out of breath. It was getting dark. All the streets looked the same. They came to a place with a metal fence with wires and pylons all around and danger signs. They jumped the fence and crouched down low when the headlights swung by. Then, boom. Tens of thousands of volts of electricity. 2 of them died straight away. The next few nights, I watch from my 5th floor window. There's the sound of windows smashing. Then the fires start. Cars, buildings, the neighbourhood starts to burn. Debbie gets home from her job in the supermarket, puts the chain across the door, puts earplugs in and gets her eye mask, goes to bed and waits for it all to be over. Have you ever gone outside in your pajamas? I did. I slip the chain off the door. I put on my trainers and a hoodie over the top. I stand on the scrubby patch of grass outside our block. There's car alarms, a smell of smoke and petrol. A group of people run out from behind the building across the street. They've got scarves covering their faces. One of them holds a bottle with something inside it. As they run past me, a siren sounds suddenly closer. The masked figure crouches, sets the bottle on the pavement, and then they disappear into the night. I pick the bottle up. The glass is hot, too hot to hold for long. I just want to see what it feels like, to throw something, to smash something, to start something. I raise my arm and my hood falls away. I want to forget everything. Being a daughter, being a girl, being 13. There's a flash. Someone shouts. I drop the bottle. Fire spills all over the pavement, licks at my trainers, at the edges of the grass. I turn and run inside. I'm fine. The next morning, the landlord lets himself in and winks at Debbie eating breakfast in her bathrobe. Brought you the news, he says, and he drops the paper on top of her plate. The headline says, Les enfants perdus, which means the lost children, and a photo, a girl on a dark street, curly hair, birthmark. It's me. Debbie just sits there when the landlord tells us we'll have to go. He says, I am evicting you with immediate effect. She says, I'm still in my freaking dressing gown. He says, 30 minutes, I want you gone. She starts clearing up the breakfast stuff. I knock the milk bottle and it spills all over the table, and she says, Christ, Maya, haven't you done enough? Have you ever slept in an airport? We did, for 3 nights. I look at the families waiting to go on holiday. I fall asleep and my head drops onto Debbie's shoulder. She pulls away like she's been stung. My head bangs against the hard metal armrest and I feel like saying, what did you do that for? But I just say, I'm fine. Debbie doesn't say anything for a long time. Then later, when it's dark out on the runway and you can see the lights on the control tower, she says, Maya, looking straight ahead. Maya, you've got to understand, I'm busting a gut just to keep us alive here. It's all I've got. I can't do any more than that at the moment. And then she says, please don't touch me. I just can't stand it right now. Lying on the sofa, I listened to Debbie banging about in the kitchen, running the taps and moving pans around. I put a cushion behind my head and closed my eyes. Do you believe in God? I met this girl in Benin City. Her name was Miracle. She had a dream to go to Italy. She said it was the land of ice cream parlors and Ferraris. Miracle met a woman called Alexa. Alexa was going to get Miracle a job in a designer clothes shop in Milan. Miracle would make enough money to send to her mother to pay for her little brother and sister to go to school. Alexa gave her gifts: a silver bracelet with a broken heart, a pen from Disneyland, a lipstick in a shade of red called Starter Marriage. One day, Miracle says, "I'm going on Saturday to Italy. It's happening. I told Alexa about you. She says, brilliant, you can come too." I say, "I don't think Debbie will let me." And Miracle says, "It's time to start pulling your weight." On Saturday night, I sneak out. We walk out to the aircraft boneyard, Miracle and me. The abandoned planes look like massive beached whales. It's a full moon. We sit on a wing overgrown with branches. We put on the Starter Marriage lipstick. Alexa appears out of the dark. She's not like Miracle described her. "What's this?" she says to Miracle. "My friend. I told you. You didn't tell me about that birthmark. Well, it's too late now. Jesus, get that muck off your lips." And she wipes the lipstick off our mouths with her thumb. A shadow passes over the moon. A car engine starts up somewhere nearby. I clutch Miracle's hand as we climb into the back of the car. The lipstick presses into our palms like a bullet. Alexa shows us a picture of an old man on her phone. She says, "This is a priest. He does juju magic. He has secured you. Do what you're told. Don't talk to the driver. If he says get down, get down." Then she snaps a picture of us for the juju man, slams the door and says, "See you later down the road, cowgirls." We drive out of the city. I stare at the back of the driver's head. Miracle starts to cry. I give her a shove. I say, "That juju magic is a load of rubbish anyway." I say, "I'm fine." Have you ever tried a Ouija board? I heard about this girl who tried one. The Ouija board spelled out her name. It said Irina. Irina, go away. She went round saying it was a load of rubbish. But then she started finding these notes everywhere, little scraps of paper in her bag and in her locker. Irina, go away. Irina, go home. And then, scratched into her desk, get back to where you came from. We keep driving. We lose count of the days. When the driver turns around, we see he's just a boy. Soon, it's just sand and sky. The sand gets everywhere, under our fingernails, up our noses. Nothing lives in that desert. Even the birds don't stop there. When we see a cloud of dust on the horizon, getting bigger, the driver boy says, "Get down." We get down. We lie in the footwell, gripping each other. We hear engines, shouting, really loud, bad music. A hand slams against the passenger door and the car rocks. There's a loud crack, like a branch snapping. Glass shatters onto us. Miracle makes a sound. I whisper to her, "Keep still." I slowly ease the lid off the lipstick. The insides have turned to liquid in the heat. Red goo oozes all over my hands. I draw my fingers across our necks. I cover us in red. I paint us dead. Voices circle round the car. It feels like hours pass. When I finally get up, my legs and arms are stiff. The driver's gone. The desert's empty again. Miracle is curled in a ball, starter marriage all over her, but more red too, much more, dark and sticky around her head. There's nothing, just me and the desert going on and on and on. I try to say, I'm fine. It's really hard to pull Miracle out of the car. I dig her a grave. The sand keeps filling it up again. It's like trying to dig a hole in the ocean. I put the lipstick and the silver bracelet and the pen from Disneyland in an empty water bottle. I bury them next to her and I say a prayer. Then I get in the car. I start the engine. I press all of the pedals until it goes forwards. And then I drive. And I just keep driving. I drove into a town where all the buildings looked like sandcastles. I was taken to a place called a connection house. Men with guns and daggers and crosses shaped like stars around their necks guarded the doors. It was full of girls like me, but I didn't feel like talking. I just waited. One day, they told us it was time to go. We were driven back into the desert on the backs of motorbikes. We were put in the back of a truck under a blanket and a layer of watermelons. I watched through a hole in a blanket. We drove through towns, across bridges, over mountain ranges. Every time the truck stopped, I held my breath. I dreamed of water. We reached the coast one night. We knelt on the sand and prayed under the stars. There was a boat, an inflatable thing like people take on holiday. It sunk in the middle with the weight of all of us, and we were pushed out to sea. Perhaps you've heard a story like this before. I think my mind fell out of my body that night. I think it slid over the side of the blow-up boat and fell down through the black water. I wondered, maybe I could live down there. Maybe the bottom of the ocean is the safest place on Earth. Was it only one night we were out in the middle of the sea? It's dawn when I see a ship on the horizon. A voice through a loud hailer tells us to await rescue. They haul us in. A man takes a can of black paint and sprays the word rescued on the empty dinghy, and then we leave it behind to drift forever, for all I know. People stand on the deck of the ship, crying and thanking God. A nurse checks us over and asks me how old. I say 19, like Alexa told me. She frowns and ties a blue string around my wrist. When we get off the ship, they give us flip-flops and lead us to a line of buses. The drivers wear masks over their mouths and noses. We get taken to this place, the centre they call it. We're allowed to make a phone call, so I call the number Alexa gave me. I tell her Miracle didn't make it. There's the smallest of silences, and then she says, "Okay, just wait there." Everyone gets homesick when the sun goes down. Some of us sit outside and watch the lizards run in and out of the cracks in the wall. A little van drives up. A priest and some nuns get out. They give us cake and juice. They tell us the angels are watching, and then they drive away. Eventually, we all go to bed. Are you a good sleeper? I heard about these children in Sweden. They were from somewhere else, Russia, I think. They'd lived in Sweden for a long time. They were going to school. They had friends. They went to birthday parties and played on sports teams. Then one day, their families got a letter saying, "You can't stay here anymore." Some of the children couldn't actually read the letter. Some of the parents couldn't actually read the letter, so the children had to translate. It started with one boy. After he read the letter, he went upstairs. He lay on his bed. He fell into a very deep sleep. No one could wake him. Not his parents, his brothers and sisters. his friends, or the doctors. Other children got letters, and they fell asleep too. The doctors had to invent a new name for what was happening. They called it Uppgivenhet syndrome, which means giving up disease. Those children are still asleep. But in the center, I wake up. Someone says, "There's a woman here to see you, she's waiting outside." I put on my flip-flops. I splash some water on my face. Alexa is sitting on the wall with her back to me, looking out to sea. She's smaller than I remember. She turns around. It's not Alexa. It's Debbie. In a pizza restaurant near the beach, the waitress gives us a dirty look and shows us to an outside table. I drink a lemonade. Debbie starts talking. She says, "Listen, Maya, I know I'm not the best mother out there. I'm sorry. But I just want you to know that without you in it, this world is just an empty, rattling place. It would be nothing, just an illusion. You're the realest thing. You're the only thing. You're magic." And then she hugs me for a really long time. I don't know if I dreamt the next bit. We're on a bus. It's dark outside. We go across a big bridge, through a toll, past signs with words in a language I don't recognize. I ask, "Where are we going?" And Debbie says, "I don't know." I see glimpses of things, the backs of hills and the edges of forests, retail parks and wrecking yards, and then eventually the lights of a city and a sign saying, "Welcome." Outside the new house, number 9, the sky starts to get dark. I get up off the sofa and pull down the blind. I carry my suitcase upstairs to the bedroom, a small, quiet room with white walls and soft carpets. A bit later, I'll unpack. I'd like to fill this room with things, clothes and plants and pictures and books and music, all the usual 13-year-old stuff. I'd like to pick my own wallpaper one day. But this house isn't ours, and I don't know how long we'll be staying. I probably won't be around for long. If you see me, though, in school, at the shops, going through the park, waving from the top of the transporter bridge, you'll recognize me. Curly hair, birthmark. Maybe you could say hello. I'd appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a safe journey home.